Well, good morning, everybody. It's 11:30, so we're going to get started with the pre-commission agenda, starting with the president's report. I do not have a president's report. Next is general housekeeping items or discussion on any of the agenda items. Commissioners, is there anything? Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because we've dealt with Linder recently. Can't remember who on staff it's in their bailiwick. I'm looking at Christy. School's out and their numbers are out, and apparently the population of White Pine has gone up, but the population of Timberline has gone down. So one of the things that we heard when we were hearing this is this whole circulation plan. Linder has a whole lot to do with the circulation plan in front of those two schools. And if we could engage the school district to see about whether maybe they can help us figure out some improvements around the circulation plan. I don't know that they need much parking for the high school off of Linder as the elementary school does. So anyway, here's an opportunity before we start pinning down details over the next to figure out whether the school district can help us out with some of the circulation problems that were raised when we dealt with the concept.
Anything else?
Madam President,
Yeah,
I do have a couple of questions on the consent agenda, so I will like to address those when we have opportunity with the director.
Okay. You want to go ahead and do that now?
Sure. Items 3 and 5 on the consent agenda. Item 3 is a state and local agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department. This agreement is only for the design cost. Two questions. Number one, do we have an idea of what the then construction cost is going to be? And number two, is this the subject of some kind of, is there a federal grant money that's involved? What is the financial ramifications for the Ada County Highway District on this?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, a state and local agreement is what we sign in order to enter into a grant and receive federal funds. For these, we typically pay 92 point, or the federal grant pays 92.66%. So we pay 7.23% or 24%.
And is that for both design and construction?
Yes. So
okay.
What you'll see in the budget, we front the money for the design, we get paid back. And then on the construction side, we just pay our match.
Okay. All right. Then item number 5, the Pollard Lane and West Pickett Creek Street pedestrian hybrid beacon. Just so that I have a clear view of this, it looks like we're putting in 2 pedestrian hybrid beacons and rebuilding some pedestrian ramps. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes. These are a safe route to school to Star Middle School. Star has recently or is in the process of completing a pathway from Floating Feather and Pollard. So that crossing would get people to that pathway. The other Pollard and West Pickett Creek is directly in front of the school. And so it's the access across Pollard that will allow students during pickup and drop off to cross safely.
Okay. So so 2 pedestrian beacons and some ramps, we're looking at $432,000.
Correct.
Okay. Just seems I'm just, looking at those costs, it's a bit expensive, but in any case, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Yeah, and I'll just say regarding the Pollard and with those crossings in Star, I've been working very closely with the mayor, and our staffs have been working very closely on those, and they did come in under the engineer's estimate as well. So, Commissioners, is there anything else? Okay, then I'll hand it over to you, Director Head.
Wonderful. Well, I have a brief director's report today. Want to continue some of the discussion that we've had last week and share with you some exciting things that the team has been doing. So as was presented last week, we are all working and embracing this idea of build together, build safe, and build more. And it's been fun as the director to walk around and hear those phrases. That's what you get when you have 4 words that people have to remember, and but everyone seems to be embracing it in a great way. And so I wanted to show you today some exciting things that that just happened this week that embrace that. So first is this, our maintenance team, working in connection with the Boise Fire Dive Team, had to get in and clear out some trees that had caught at the Americana Bridge. So just want to show you a brief video actually that was made to what this looked like. And really what this represents is how, when we work together with our partners, the impact that can be had. Just waiting for the cool music to stop. Really just want to highlight here and thank the Boise Fire Dive Team for helping our maintenance crews to clear that out. Obviously, anytime there's a tree at a bridge, that could quickly become a problem. And they helped us get into the water, get the cable around the trees and make it so that our team can then pull it out and pull it to shore safely. A great example of a rapid project being done. Next, I wanted to highlight a new always stop at Star and Floating Feather. So our staff, and listening to the public, identified that there was some real challenge for anyone trying to turn on to Floating Feather in the peak hours in particular. And so our team went out there and was within a couple weeks was able to deploy. This just went in yesterday. Another example of building safe, the mayor offered his team to help get the word out so people understood what the change was. Just excited to see that collaboration, but the team was able to get this in place. And so now this intersection will operate all the more smoothly. We're going to also take a look at how we can improve the pedestrian crossings here immediately adjacent to the park. As you know, while we're able to get this in place today, we don't have necessarily the conditions to install the pedestrian crossings in a way that we would like to, but that would be a rapid project that we'll be taking a look at. And lastly, I want to highlight a great example. Last year, our team, as part of the 2000, I'm not going to say a year because it'll sound weird saying that it happened in 2024. But as part of one of our maintenance projects, we were making improvements to Maple Grove between Franklin and I-84. Well, this project had to close the road, and it was scheduled to close the road for four weeks. Because we had all the work happening on 5 Mile by Veolia, the team delayed it until this year. However, the schedule was to close the road for 4 weeks. They had it done in 11 days and back open to traffic, being able to at least have the 1 lane in each direction. And we expect in the next week or so to have it fully open. So just want to highlight the great work of staff to build more faster. Again, just highlighting the days coming up. Want to emphasize your next meeting is actually a joint meeting with the city of Boise on June 16th here at noon. Other things coming up, but want to make sure you are aware of the May in Motion Awards luncheon, and ask again to have you RSVP to Stacy. The Family Fun Day at Kleiner Park on the 27th. That'll be a fun time, and I'm sure everyone would love to introduce their family members to you all. You know, And Commissioner Goldthorpe, you can come as a clown if you'd like. I'm sure they would love that. But then our next all staff is scheduled for July 30th. So lots of fun days as we get into summer. Chip seal continues. For the joint meeting, these are the topics that are on the agenda as we speak. It's still being finalized, but this is the agenda that's been worked out with the city for now. With that concludes my director's report, and I'll take any questions.
I have a couple.
Commissioner Hanson.
The first one is where our work session on Warm Springs is not happening today.
Yes, thank
Correct.
you.
Correct. So I just want to point out, I know I caught a couple of people to let them know that I knew they were coming to listen and or provide some public testimony. So we might have a couple of additional comments during public communications. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioner, we apologize for the late notice as we reviewed the presentation yesterday. Thought we needed a little bit more time to work out a few things before we bring it back to you with the revised concept. So just want to make sure that that's ready to go before we air it. So the plan is to bring that back in 2 weeks.
Great.
So and as we take comment, obviously anyone can come and make public testimony, but ideally when they make testimony on the project, we want to include that when we're having a hearing on that.
The second is, do we have a date? Because I know it was difficult to get the city of Boise schedule arranged. So we're actually doing this back to back with a Compass board meeting.
Mhm.
And I'll probably leave to make sure I go to the Compass board meeting in person. Do we have a follow-up date scheduled or a series of dates? It sounds like that it's more complicated working joint meetings with the city of Boise. And so I hope soon we can sort of set up our goal, I think, was to try and have them quarterly, at least, or every three times a year. But we tend to schedule them and then wait a few weeks before we schedule the next one, and then it's difficult. So my advice is that we schedule the next one as soon as possible. Get on track.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I enjoyed the video of the work with the fire department. I couldn't help but think of how the video might have looked more like the Keystone Cops video if we'd have done one in 2017 in the spring with one tree after another trying to float to the Linder Bridge. That's still a nightmare.
For sure.
All right.
Thank
Well, that is all. We will be at ease until noon. All right, everybody, it's now 12 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to everybody in person and online. Thanks for joining us, and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first order of business is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just want to say on the agenda, we'll be moving the work session until June 26th.
Right, the
Warm
That's
the Warm
Springs.
Springs,
Post-commission, Warm Springs.
yeah, Warm Springs work session is being moved to June 26th. Thank you. All right, motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Do we have any such requests? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President. Oh,
Sorry,
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, that moves us to our regular agenda. Item 1 is authorization, order of condemnation, Ustick and Black Cat intersection, ACHD project 322024, parcel 7. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Welcome, Dave Zerdar.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for ACHD. As stated, this is a condemnation decision briefing as well as a public hearing for that condemnation. I hit the wrong button, one sec. This condemnation is for the Ustick Road 10 Mile and Black Cat intersection project. The owners are William and Gina Kerwin. This project is part of the 2024 through 2028 integrated 5-year work plan, and construction is scheduled to begin in fiscal year 25. This is the vicinity map of the location. Going from right to left or left to right is Ustick Road, kind of in the middle of the picture there. And as you can see, this property owner is right along Black Cat. Here's a little more of a close-up of the property. Quickly, the fee acquisition is 9,665 square feet. The permanent easement is 401 square feet, and the temporary construction easement is 3,568 square feet. As you can see, there's a canal on the backside of the property there, or a ditch, but a water irrigation that goes on the backside of the property, as well as a lot of the discussion or a lot of has revolved around the driveway there to the house, that kind of half moon or triangular driveway. Property size before the acquisition is 2.743 acres. Property size after is 2.52. The zoning on this is rural urban transition. ACHD originally mailed the offer package back in March of 2024. We were able to get the owner to sign for the package on April 29th, 2024. ACHD and the property owner have had extensive conversations regarding the driveway and the best way to approach that in the future. The owners in ACHD were still in active negotiations, and I can tell you my staff is trying to get this resolved, and I do believe over time we will get this resolved. But time is of the essence on this project. We have been waiting for the owner to provide some bids for the driveway move, because they would have to have a movement to get that more into the driveway, into the house there, as you could see. An ACHD staff has met with general counsel, and general counsel has told us that they would be willing to wait before they actually filed anything with the court, so we can have some time to discuss with them on this issue. Therefore, it is staff recommendation that we declare the acquisition area necessary for the project as a right-of-way and public use, authorize the staff to proceed with the condemnation of the acquisition area, and execute an order of condemnation for the acquisition area. And this is one of the last couple parcels for this project. We do have a couple more slated to come before the commission in the next couple weeks. So I'll remain standing for any questions.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, before I ask any questions, I need to make a disclosure, and that's that I have had a conversation with Kerwins about this. Some time ago now, I had an opportunity to meet Mrs. Kerwin in her profession, and we had a pleasant conversation then, so I handed her my business card and said, if I can ever do anything for you, give me a call. I got a call. And so I just wanted to let you know, we discussed a few of the aspects of this project, and then I realized that this was coming before us. So here I am telling you about that conversation. And I was the one that invited them to come because, as most of you know, we almost never have anyone show up for these hearings, regardless of what feelings might have been generated or how much they like us or hate us or anything else. In the last one that I can really remember at length where we had someone come was back in like 2016 when we were doing the Franklin and Black Cat intersection project. And that's been a long time. I had a few others, but anyway, so I made the invitation because I think the commission would really love to hear what the Kerwins have to say. In fact, I told them about the 3-minute rule and that they ought to split that up so they get 6 minutes. Anyhow, that's all I have to say right this second, although I am very interested and somewhat concerned looking at the map and seeing how close to the new sidewalk that the front of their house is going to be. What in the world are we proposing or might be proposed for access to their home, access to their front door, and you know, I would just like to know a little bit more about that to start with.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner, President Gold, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Just to answer a couple of questions, just to let you know, on all of our condemnations, we do always give some of that information. We do send that information to the property owners and they can come. So most of the time it is a choice.
Oh, I know that. It's always a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they're here too as well. I do, in terms of the driveway and that front is kind of a concern for us and how they get into that garage. And so that is one of the things that we're kind of working on. Typically, we wouldn't want to do that design. In this case, we were kind of looking to them to do a little bit of how they wanted. As I understood it from the agent, they kind of had a little better way they wanted to do it. And so we were looking at how they would potentially access that and looking for some bids and some design that, you know, some kind of ideas on how we wanted to go. We hadn't got those yet, so that's what we're just working for right now. And that's why I am hopeful, because I do believe once we see that, we'll be able to hammer this out fairly quickly. So,
Okay, I remember one other project that I had a similar concern at, and I mentioned it was at the roundabout on Locust Grove and Victory. And the concern that I had wound up being addressed very well. But I was so concerned, I was wondering if we shouldn't buy that house a little bit to the west of the roundabout. And we didn't have to. A concern I have here because of, I mean, this is close to a high school. Kids aren't necessarily the best drivers on God's green earth. And there's going to be another traffic signal for them to run the red lights on. And as we know, that's kind of a contest right now in this county. How many people can run a hard red after it's turned? And, if somebody gets T-boned or about to get T-boned, swerves off the road and hits the front of their house, I'm a little concerned with that.
Madam President, Commissioners, Diane Bevins, Manager of Capital Projects and Interim Deputy Director of Planning and Projects. I just want to give you a little bit of dimension. So there is a right turn lane in front of the house, right there at the garage. So that's 11 feet. Plus with the buffer, the multi-use pathway, that's another 19 feet. So that's 30 feet away from an actual travel lane to the right-of-way line. And then there's still a distance from the right-of-way line to the house.
Good to know.
Yes.
Thanks. Hard to tell from the pictures.
Commissioner?
Madam President?
Yeah, Commissioner McKinney?
Dave, kind of continuing on with that. So kind of what Commissioner Goldthorpe was alluding to raises the question of setbacks. Does this change bring any problem with setbacks? And I have to admit, looking at this location, I'm not certain whether are they in the city limits of Meridian or just in the county. What are the setback requirements, and does this change affect any of that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, the setbacks do vary between city, county, and various cities within our operational district. I guess that's how you would say it. They are out from the terms of proximity damages. They are outside the setbacks on this. So that space is not necessarily a proximity damage. What we would, there is a real issue. It's a different type of damage called the severance damage, but there is a real issue, we think, with getting them into the driveway and into the garage. We think that's the issue that we really have to solve here.
Right. Well, and that's kind of my next question. What kind of a distance do we have from the intersection to their access point for their driveway? Because it seems that we've got a fairly short distance there. Are we looking 100 feet or something more or less that, or is it less than that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I don't have the distance from the driveway to the center, to the intersection. So that's not something I have.
Right. Well, okay.
We can certainly look it up and get back to you.
Sure, absolutely. And let me encourage you with your continued negotiations with the property owners. So hopefully we can get everything worked out to everyone's satisfaction. Thanks.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
I'm sure that the property owners are going to have some questions for us, and I would appreciate some of the answers being addressed by the project manager, who I know is here. Sure. Thanks.
There's nothing else from the commission, then I'm going to open it up for testimony. The property owners are here, so Mr. and Mrs. Kerwin, if you would like to come up and comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Gina Kerwin. I am one of the owners of 3550 North Black Cat. I am here today because I do have some concerns over the property, the information that we've been given. And I do want to say that I am a nurse, and when I obtained my nursing degree, one of my responsibilities was to be an advocate for my patients. And one of those responsibilities is ensuring that they understand that the medical treatment that they are about to go through, they don't have any other questions, that I've been able to help them understand, because if you're not in the medical profession, there can be a lot of confusing language and it can be difficult. I am required to be able to provide that information. Whenever somebody gets ready to do a procedure, we have to do a contract or a consent form, but it is called an informed consent form. It is required by the American Medical Association Code of Ethics, and it is consent so that they are able to make well-considered decisions about their care. You're supposed to have successful communication, and also on that, you're supposed to assess the patient's ability to understand, comprehend the procedure and risks and benefits, alternatives, and lasting complications that may occur, medications, and aftercare. So if you're not medical professional, medical terminology can be intimidating and confusing. So as nurses, a lot of times, we are the ones who'll do the translating from the doctors. Before we can proceed with any procedure, we do have to have a consent form. I work in a procedure area, so that's one of the things I do check is to make sure consents have been signed, but I also have to make sure that they've signed and the doctor has gone over risks and benefits before I can even bring them back to procedures. We have to always explain negative incomes and address those and see what the risks will be. Unfortunately, this is going to be a large impact on our property. We have received the documents in survey language, in language that, not something I didn't go to school for. So it's hard to read. We have had some few questions, and as we saw here just a little bit ago about how much distance from the driveway, how are we going to access parts, it still left a lot of unknown answers. And so we're not able to have full informed consent being able to give here. One example I would like to say is, how would you like it if you were asked to sign consent on a selective coronary angiography of the right coronary artery, the left main LAD, left circumflex artery, left ventricle catheterization, left ventricle angiography, angioplasty of total occluded mid RCA. And so that's what we've been getting through survey language.
And I can say that you explained that very well for me.
I appreciate that. But yeah, we do have a lot of questions. We need to have more information, and we need to address a lot of those risks, benefits, and negative outcomes that could come from this. And I'll let BJ take. That's all I have to say for right now.
All right,
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I'd like to say thank you for the comparison, actually.
All right.
All right, welcome.
I'm William Kerwin, owner, 3150 North Black Hat, Meridian. First, I would like to say, Commissioner Goldthorpe, thanks for letting us know that we had a right to come to this meeting and be able to speak on our behalf. Since we were notified that the project was happening, there's been a lot of miscommunication. Surveyors came out, did their job, got a letter from the appraiser that they were going to be there 1 of 2 days in January. I would have liked to have met with them. Didn't know that they came, when they came, never contacted us or anything. So it started off with the appraiser. Couple months later, there was contractors working in the yard with a big drilling truck. My daughter, who lives at the house, contacted us. I rushed over there, asked them what they were doing, and told them that they had to leave because we had no idea what they were doing on the property and who gave them permission to be there. But we sure didn't. We had no idea that they were even there. So we ran them off. I sent a letter off to, I believe it was Seth Jarsky, said, hey, you guys got shown up drilling on the property that's right in the septic drain field. If you guys drill through one of those tubes or something, you're going to damage the drain field, and then we're going to have a bigger issue. So without knowing that they were even there, they're doing work. So we ran them off, let him know. They asked to have somebody come out and map where the drain field was, gave them permission to do that. They had their contractors come out and do that. I don't know if we could bring up the the pictures, but you saw the lane to the south there. So they drove their heavy equipment on that lane. They drove all the way across the yard, which we just had put in last fall, and spent a pretty considerable sum to do that. So they drove their heavy equipment across that, left ruts in the yard because it had been raining for 2 weeks. So they drove that over 300 feet across the yard to go do their work. I let Seth again know that. He informed me that once the grass grows, the ruts will somehow disappear. So what, I was just more about the disrespect and again, of the property. So that's a major concern for us. Again, about a month ago, drilling truck showed up again, had no knowledge, drilling in, the same spot they were before. So I again went over, told them, you don't have permission to be here. Nobody notified us. You guys need to leave. And so they did. There's power poles, huge power poles, the big gray ones that are about 10, 12 feet around. Where they're drilling, that's gonna be right next to the house in the garage where you guys saw the roundabout. To the north of that was a little rock area where they were drilling. So that's gonna be pretty close to the house, but nobody can give me a definite location of where those poles are gonna be. That's a concern for us too. I don't want that thing right next to the garage of our house, if at all possible. The driveway is an issue, as ACHD said, they, we just talked about the driveway issue maybe a couple weeks ago when I met with Becca. And, we kind of came up with a little idea to maybe make a lane down, whatever, but that was the design process there on site. There's something that hadn't been considered by them until we brought it up and made it an issue.
Mr. Kerwin,
Yep.
that's 3 minutes, so if you wouldn't mind
Okay, thank
wrapping
you.
it up, thank you.
I was gonna say,
Commissioner
my
Hanson.
question would be, tell me more
Oh.
if you want to finish, because you're right in the middle of a thought.
It's just the driveway thing was kind of an afterthought. I mean, and now it's like, well, I can get some bids. So it's been kind of left up to me to redesign that as far as the location goes, get the cost for it. And then I've been, contacted, I guess is a nice word to say, repeatedly about whether I have the pricing. That's a huge design thing to just turn over in a couple of weeks. And contractors are busy. There's going to be a lot of grading. And I'm not even sure that I want it there anyway. And to get to your point about the traffic and running red lights and stuff, we've had cars miss hitting another car and end up in our yard already. So when you're pushing that intersection that much closer to the house, it is a concern. So, that might hit the setbacks and stuff, but we've already had cars in our yard already, and now we're moving the intersection even closer to the house. So just a lot of unanswered questions. There's also a drainage ditch that I'm not even sure they're aware of, cuts across the property and then heads south. That hasn't been addressed either. So just a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, but we just keep getting hounded to just sign the papers, So that's all I have, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Commissioner Golder.
Other than the matter of the possible change in the cost for relocating the driveway, is there anything about the offer that's not been acceptable?
Yeah, I think the house is going to be uninhabitable for probably a year or whatever, however long the duration of the project is. There's going to be no access whatsoever to that driveway or the front yard other
And
than
it's
going.
used as a rental right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't,
No,
I'm good.
thank you. Right, is there anybody else who would like to provide any testimony on this?
I have a question for Dave.
Commissioner Golder.
In considering before Dave?
You can.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Okay, so nobody else online or in person who wants to comment, then I'll close the public hearing.
Okay, have there been any considerations given yet towards any of the losses for rental income and that sort of thing?
Madam President, Commissioner, Goldthorpe, we have not, as a part of all of our processes, we'll look at that. Some things on rental income are, oh, go ahead. Okay, yeah, we do look at all of that stuff. In this case, we will, and we always do, make sure that they have access through construction. So it won't be closed off for a year. We will be able to make sure that they'll have access through that time. And most of the, I mean, there is going to be impacts because of construction, but we do everything we can to minimize those.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. One is, and this, I don't know if legal counsel's here, the whole notion of that the burden is on the property owner to come up with bids, design concepts, if they want to use the property, and, you know, during and after the construction of this take. So it seems to me the burden ought to be on the agency to come up with concepts and help them in that direction rather than completely leave it up to property owners. But I don't know.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we can absolutely help them. They had a specific idea. You know, we don't want to presume that our solution is the best solution. So working with the property owner, if they have an idea of how they want to connect their two driveways and create, you know, a new kind of horseshoe type driveway that they have today in a different location, we can do that if we know how, you know, where they want those driveways. Then I think in this situation, we could design it into the project and put that cost into the project if that's the direction. If we get the direction from the property owner or where they want the driveways, then we can work with that.
That seems reasonable because obviously they hadn't contemplated what this project requiring them to redesign the use of their property. The second is because of the unique configuration of this intersection with the canal or ditch going underneath the intersection, everything. But I've noticed that there's a tendency, especially on arterials, to just always go straight and not to actually shift it east or west. And in this case, was there consideration because of the existing use on this property? I think there's no development on the property to the northeast. And I don't know what it is. It looks like subdivisions, but they're set back on the west side. I'm actually shifting that intersection, 3 or 4 feet or more to the west so that the alignment wouldn't have as big an impact on the, because at the design stage, we can do that. I mean, we design things in order to preserve old trees. We do things, to go up and over canals. And so we'll shift the configuration to the west or east. So was there consideration of that? Because this is the only property that actually has front-on housing.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, the property right across the street on Black Cat is also front-on housing. So I can't say that we specifically looked at that, but I know we're maintaining the 20 feet of driveway from the garage of this home. I know I'm not minimizing the impact at all. It's definitely taking a bit of right of way in front of their home, and it is an impact. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But through the process, if we're able to keep that 20 feet, which allows is a parking space, allows a car to park in that driveway, generally we would have considered that, an acceptable condition through the design process.
Okay, just want to make sure that we've explored every possibility, including shifting the whole intersection a few feet to the west.
Commissioner McKinney?
Thank you. Dave, let me just ask, and of course, I think it goes without saying that, of course, we deal with these orders of condemnation frequently. That's a common part of what ACHD does and has to do. And I know that agreeing to the order of condemnation is not the end of the process. There's much more give and take that goes on between the district and property owners to come up with a solution that's agreeable to everyone, because we don't want to end up in court any more than property owners do. That being said, if we if we approve this order of condemnation today, it won't come back to us at all, right? It'll just be a matter then of negotiation between the district and the property owners, and we won't see it again. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct with the amount of money that we're talking.
Okay. And so the only way that it would, the only way that there would be, additional proceedings on the matter, aside from the negotiations between the property owner, would be if you couldn't reach agreement and it went to some kind of litigation or something in that direction.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct.
Okay, so basically, if we agree to this order of condemnation today, we won't see it again. The property owners and the district will have opportunity to consider the proposed design, possible ways to fix things, concerns and so on. And there won't be anything else unless there's not agreement reached eventually. And if we don't approve the order of condemnation, we'll just be doing this again in the future, but after there's been some additional discussions and so on with the property owners. So that's really, and I think it's worth us recognizing that that's kind of the choice today. Do we say, we want to hear this again, we want to look at this specifically again, or we have confidence in our staff to work with the property owners to come to a reasonable agreement?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, and in this particular situation, because of the timeline of the project, is why we're bringing this to you today, is more about the schedule than where we are about, with working with the property owner. And specifically, Steve said, legal has said they will not file the court documents. They will hold off on the filing to give us more time. But we have this, if we have this approval from the commission today, then it gives us a few more weeks to negotiate, and that before we would have to file the condemnation with the courts.
Okay. And just for my benefit, what is the status of the design of the project? Are we at 95%? Are we at 100%?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we're buying right away and we're almost complete. So this is 99% design, and we're going to
Okay.
bid this fall and construct.
So all of the questions about what's happening with power pole placement, what's happening with this drainage ditch, what's happening with this and that, nor there, all of that information should be knowable right now. And we should be able to fairly quickly answer any of the property owners' questions about those things. Is that a
Madam
fair statement?
President, Commissioner McKinney, I believe we would be waiting on plans from Idaho Power for the exact location of the power pole. That is not in our control of the timeline on when we get those plans. But certainly if there was an irrigation ditch that was missed on the plans and he has brought that to our attention, we will definitely incorporate that into the design.
Okay, good. Then let me add, this is just by way of comment then. It sounds like, we're in the situation where the property owner's questions can all be answered. So the information is all available for everyone on both sides, for the district and for the property owners, to make decisions. All the necessary sort of background information is available for decision and negotiation. And it makes sense to me that we move the procedure forward, knowing that, this order today doesn't decide all of the questions. It simply says, okay, we go forward with the next steps and hope that the, property owners and the district can come to an agreement. But this is the time to start working on that as quickly as possible. And so I think it would make sense not to delay this decision, but to go forward. So that I think that makes sense. And it's because, we're obligated to be fair with property owners. We're also obligated to move forward with projects. And I think this accomplishes both things in that regard. So thank you very much.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldberg.
That's an interesting questions and comments about what we're obligated to do and not obligated to do. It seems to me right now that we're not obligated to worry about what Idaho Power might come up with in terms of how close they want that monstrous pole to be to their home. And that's a big concern to me. Because I've witnessed and watched some of the things that Idaho Power has wound up placing and doing on people's properties that we are working on before. And I'm not at all confident that they have the property owner's interests at heart, to tell you the truth. So that part I would disagree on with what Commissioner McKinney's assessment is. Thank you.
So you mentioned legal counsel holding this for 3 to 4 weeks. And then can you kind of compare that to what a process would be like to get this back in front of the commission? And like how that impacts the project timeline?
Commissioners, for the record, Justin Lucas, the Chief of Operations and Infrastructure here at ACHD. Commissioners, I think you have a couple choices here. If you do choose to provide a little bit more time for negotiation prior to taking action on the condemnation, we'd like to bring it back in 2 weeks. That gives us an additional 2 weeks to try and resolve some of the questions that have arisen. And sit down with the property owners and go through this in detail. We're absolutely willing to do that. We want to do that. That's part of our job, and we can do that. Hopefully get this largely resolved in that 2-week window. You could also, as Commissioner McKinney recommended, go ahead and move forward with this today. We'll do essentially exactly the same thing in the 2-week window. We'll go forward. We will negotiate. We will sit down with the property owners. And I talked to Steve about this. We wouldn't take any action on court proceedings or anything like that within that 2-week window. As Diane mentioned, this is crunch time on a project that is critical for the highway district. This is the connectivity out to Owyhee High School, and we want to get this project going. The right-of-way window on this has been small, which is partially why we're pressing so hard here. But I think the commission, either way you go, if you'd like to delay this action for 2 weeks, or go ahead and go forward and we can commit to a really strong 2-week negotiation period. Maybe that bleeds into 3 weeks, that's fine. But if you do delay today the condemnation, we'd ask that you defer it for 2 weeks. And then really at the commission's direct discretion, if that's fair.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Justin, do you think that Idaho Power will be willing to commit to where the placement of that pole is going to be within 2 weeks?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, we're going to dig into that issue. I think we're going to be able to get a pretty good feeling for that. I know we have to look at the plans. My understanding is that power pole will be in our right of way. Yeah, I believe it will be. Usually it is. We'll have to look and see exactly where that location is when it comes to the power pole, whether it's in the right of way or the temporary construction easement. We'll have to dig into that. Whether we can get that information in 2 weeks, I don't know today, but we'll do our darndest to do it.
Okay, just so you know what the real basis for my concern about this is, and that was when we approved the project, the roundabout at 10 Mile and Amity. And there was a property owner there, his name's Joe Waite. And Idaho Power arbitrarily moved the pole from the opposite side of the road to his side of the road and put it like 2 feet from his foundation. And I swore then if it was in my power, I was not going to allow them to do that again. So that's my concern.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, thank you. And we'll get with Idaho Power and see what kind of information we can get specifically on that.
Thanks.
Commissioner Hanson.
So, Madam President and Justin, I appreciate that. I feel more comfortable deferring this for 2 or 3 weeks because by issuing an order of condemnation, the district holds all the cards. And I think we need to have a more balanced discussion with the property owners in the interim, especially in determining the placement of the power pole. And the final details of the design on this. So I would prefer that we defer this.
Thanks. And Commissioner Pickering is online. Did you have any comments?
No, just that I've been listening and I would support a motion to defer it.
Is there a motion?
Yes, but I would rather that it not be 2 weeks. I would make a motion that we defer it for 3 weeks or sooner if we get an approval that meets with the property owners' if we get some decisions that meet with the property owner's approval.
I'll second that motion.
So
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
for clarification, then the motion is to defer for up to 3 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, that's all for the regular agenda. Moving on to discussion items. Any public communications in person or online? Anybody who wants to speak to the commission?
I don't have anybody.
Okay. Well, with that, we are adjourned, and that moves us to the post-commission agenda and work session. So the first work session, the Warm Springs Avenue, has been postponed until June 26th. And so we have the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Budget Review, Christy Inselman and, Christine Tandler, actually. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. Yeah, after reviewing kind of what the commission's direction was, excuse me, with regard to this, it's gonna be more on the budget side. The integrated 5-year work plan is, at least the budget is the first 2 years of the integrated 5-year work plan are the budget. For the record, Christine Tandler, budget manager at the Highway District. Let's see, so I wanted to once again show this slide, and this is kind of one of the reasons why we're here, right? When I was here on May 8th, we had discussed the property tax certification options. The major knob that can be adjusted by the commission is the property tax certification. Again, this is the same slide you saw on May 8th with those options. So we're here to continue to discuss the balancing of the FY25 budget. One of the requests on the May 8th was to look at what would the property taxes look like dependent upon what the commission's decision was with related to that certification. So that's what is depicted on this slide. As you can see, the projected levy and property taxes payment to ACHD is in the top box, and then with all of the increases to identified and detailed on the previous slide is in that bottom box. So for a home, an average home of $500,000, it'd be about a difference of $12, and that's per year. So an increase of about $12 per year for an average home would increase the revenue, the property tax certification revenue to ACHD by just over $3.4 million. So as you can see, including the revenues that were available and that initially the head nod was given on May 8th to include all of those options for property tax certification, we're showing revenues of just under 235 million. And at first swath of expenditures, we're looking at 241.6 million. Now, it's normal in June for us to still be working toward balancing. We haven't done a June work session with the commission in the midst of balancing. So I just want, the $7 million is really, it's a really, I'm going to say simple, but I've been doing this a long time, balancing act to do. And so I'll kind of work through this with the commission. But again, a $7 million variance in June is not uncommon as we come up on the getting prepared for the packet and the review that happens in July. And so with that, I'm going to put this slide back up. I'm going to ask if we're on track. I wanted to pause here and ask, having some certainty in the revenue is necessary for staff to be able to bring forward a balanced budget and know that we're balancing. You know, having the revenue and having the expenses, it is a chicken and an egg process. How much revenue do you need depends on how much your expenses are, and kind of figuring out that balancing process. So I'm gonna pause here and allow the commission to kind of give me some direction or let me know if we're on the right track with this.
Commissioners?
Madam President.
Yeah, Commissioner Pickering.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Obviously I missed that the May 8th presentation, so my voice hasn't been heard publicly, or at least if we haven't sat down one-on-one yet on this, but my preference really is not to take the 3% for property taxes. And I'm supportive of the other other increases, but I think that's the one that I have the most heartburn about and not supportive of.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you. Christine, just a couple of questions. I want to first make sure that I understand everything that I'm looking at here on this page and on the other one where you had the chart. So the 3% annual allowable increase, that's the amount, how much we could take in any given year of a property tax increase, correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, correct.
Okay. And the 1%, is that what we call the new construction allowance? Is that what we're talking about there?
No, Madam President, on this slide currently, it does not show the new construction. Stuff is, taking the new construction amount and adding that to your certification just keeps the district level with all new, value and new, infrastructure that's built in the agency. So let me go back a couple slides. As you can see on that total certification at the top, the 48.081, that does include the new construction roll. Through the analysis, and through the preparation of the budget, including that, new construction roll as more of an assumed increase allows for us to continue to provide the, idea that growth somewhat pays for itself. And through House Bill 389 that was passed several years ago, there are some restrictions related to new construction roll. We can only collect up to 90% of the new construction roll in the valley. So part of that calculation has been changed, but so that is not depicted in this slide specifically.
Okay, let me, and I have, I have several questions here that go to this, but I think first, I think it's worth pointing out because the general public, I don't think generally understands how the property tax certification is done. Most people think that we decide on a property tax levy rate, and that's how it's done. When in fact, it's, the way I would put it is it's reverse engineered. That basically we and every other entity that receives revenue from property taxes, we calculate a dollar amount that we want, and then the levy rate is sort of reverse calculated from that. In other words, based on the value, estimated value of property in the county, it's the levy rate is determined to give us the dollar amount that we're looking for. Is that an accurate description of how it works?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And so here's one thing that I've been wondering about lately. Since I've been on the commission, we have never taken the 3% annual increase. That's my recollection in any case. I don't believe we've taken it in the time that I've been on the commission. And so, but at the same, and so what we've done then, and the new construction number that we just talked about, that has to do with based on how many new based on new construction in the county, an estimate is made of what the additional property tax revenues will be from that new property. And so that's what is then added to our property tax number, right? Is that accurate there as well?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yeah, if I could, so with the new construction roll, because it is a math problem, right? So regardless if the commission elects to take the new construction roll value and increase your certification by the value of the new construction roll, your total market value in Ada County is increasing by that amount. So, which is your denominator. So regardless, your levy rate will decrease if you don't increase your numerator corresponding to that increase in your denominator. Does that make sense? Because regardless if you choose to take the additional revenue related to new construction roll, that amount is added to the total market value in ACHD's jurisdiction. So essentially, we'll receive less money per $1,000 on the levy rate for each $10,000. So we're essentially having to do more with the same amount of money because we have additional infrastructure that needs to be done. One way to think about it is that all things remaining equal, and we don't control the assessed value of homes, but if your home value remained the same and from one year to the next, ACHD did not take any increase in new construction real value and the certification, your property taxes would go down that are
Right.
paid to ACHD. If they didn't, they would effectively continue the same.
Right, okay, and I appreciate that, and so what I'm getting at is that the new construction amount is intended to kind of keep things flat, as you said. I think in truth, it doesn't exactly do that. It kind of comes close. It tries to do that, but it doesn't do it exactly. So, but here's what I'm getting at. As I said, in the 4 years that I've been on the commission, we have not taken the 3% annual increase. But during that time, inflation has dramatically changed the value of the dollar. And also property values have gone up significantly. So what that tells me is that if our property tax certification is only going up a token amount because of new construction, so let's just set that aside and just sort of, that sort of pays, that sort of, it's sixes each way. The actual value of the property tax amount that comes to ACHD today, based on the same property tax certification sort of computation that we're doing or analysis that we're doing in the past, effectively our property taxes, the property taxes that the district has taken have effectively gone down significantly over these 4 years because of the fact that property values are going up, inflation is going up, but we're not increasing our base property tax certification. And the reason I think this is important, because I think it's important for the public to understand that when we do nothing, as we've done for 4 years with regard to raising property taxes, when we do nothing in that regard, we're actually still going backwards because the ability to work with the revenue that we have is diminishing. And what I would like to see is some sort of calculation. I know you do numbers and you're perfectly capable of doing this. I'd like to see an estimate of, let's go back 5 years to the last time that we took the 3% or any portion of it. What was the revenue amount based on that? And then plug inflation into the calculation and say, if we had raised property taxes just to keep pace with inflation, where would it be today? Now, I say all this not because I'm necessarily pushing for a property tax increase, but in considering whether or not to change our property tax certification, that's a fact that we need to be aware of, because that's kind of the elephant in the room that we're not really paying attention to. That by not changing our property tax certification year after year after year, we have been effectively getting dramatically less revenue, at least buying power in any case, compared to what we were. I'd like to see what the effective property tax really reduction we've had over the last few years based on inflation and those changes, because I think that's an important, that's worth looking at.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I kind of going back and listening at the May 8th, I tried to figure out kind of one of the questions that you were asking, which had to do with that constant dollar related to property taxes. I took my house, my property taxes. In 2018, the amount that I paid to ACHD was $162.66. In 2023, I paid $177.97. So that's a 5.7% increase. Now, if I look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the cumulative inflation rate during that time is 22.3%. So the buying power, right? So that's where that buying power comes from, from my home. In 2023, you would have to collect a comparable $198 in order to get the same buying power of the $162.
So the actual number has gone up 5.7%?
5.7%. And that's for my home. It's just an average home.
And the cumulative inflation is 22-ish percent.
From the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. And I think, that's at least when it comes to considering all the facts on the table, that's something I think the general public needs to know, because like any organization, we're affected by costs and expenses. And nobody ever wants to have their taxes raised. But the reality is everything's been going up for a long time.
And one more thing, a property tax certification doesn't always necessarily mean that property taxes are increasing. We're increasing the amount that we're certifying, but as with everything, property values will increase. And even, so I'm gonna have to get in my memory now, but the levy rate analysis I did based on what the current levy rate is for your 2023 taxes, the second half is due in a few weeks. Only taking the new construction roll value, adding that to the certification, the levy rate goes down just under 6%. With all of the increases that we talk about, and with this, that levy rate 0.000499945, which again, that's not a number I make up in my office. I like much more round numbers. It increases 1.5%, between 1.5 and 1.7% from the FY23 value. So with that, if your property value goes up less than or more than that 1.5%, there will be a point break where you'll pay less in property taxes to ACHD or more. The thing is one of the things that, again, the public it is more difficult to understand and is not something that I take lightly. I do this every day, all day, right? So understanding property taxes has been a long journey, but ACHD is a small portion of overall budgets and of overall property taxes that are collected. Oftentimes we'll hear, I paid you guys $3,000, and I'm like, well, not me.
Right.
But I'm also sensitive because I too pay those property taxes, and I see what I pay to the city and to the county and the school districts, right? So it's a cumulative effect.
Can I then just ask one hypothetical question, then I'll be quiet. Hypothetically, what if we looked at the hypothetical situation where we sort of do some of our own reverse mathematics and we say, what would happen if the levy rate stayed the same? And then we back into our property tax certification number based on the numbers, the best estimates that are available now. It's at least worth considering.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is a math problem I could do. The things that, and again, I don't know what that would be, so I'd have to look at that, but we are limited by House Bill 389 on how much our increase can then be,
Sure.
how much we then do with that.
Anyway,
And again, you kind of get into that chicken or egg circular reference situation of you can't divide by this until you know this answer. So, that is a number that I can look into. With a 1.5% increase, I'm venturing to guess it'll be comparable to the 51.5 million. But again, I'm willing to make that calculation and see.
Thanks. I'd appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, I have a comment to make. I've done some of that calculating in my mind and even pulled out a calculator once or 10 times. But along with what Commissioner McKinney has said, and along with what you have said about general inflation, I know the inflation in our business has been somewhat more than that. So we get even a less bang for the buck for every dollar we haven't taken in the last number of years. The difference in the property tax from everything that we've discussed so far today is less than what you pay for lunch at McDonald's. And that's the way I look at things. And we get criticized for doing one thing. We get criticized for doing another thing. We get criticized for not doing something. And my opinion is that we ought to do everything that we can at the present time, considering inflation, to be able to accomplish the mission that ACHD has. And we cannot do it the way we're going. We've talked for years about the cost of maintaining our roads crossing over with our revenues and capital maintenance, capital projects and all of that. And, you know, we've gotten to the point now where if we don't do something, we're going to be lucky to pay for chip sealing in another 10 years. So I think we need to do something. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe and you know, I think, yes, we're on track with this. And I do thank you, Christine, for mentioning that, you know, this is the work that you do, managing our budget. It's complicated and you're deep in the nuances of the tax, you know, codes and all of that. So, you know, this is your recommendation to us as well on how we meet the needs and expectations of the residents of Ada County. And so, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's points as well, although wouldn't object to seeing the details that Commissioner McKinney is asking for as well.
Okay.
Save the best for last.
Commissioner.
I would like to see, as Commissioner McKinney indicated, it would be nice over the last 10 years. So what was the levy rate? So we could do some comparisons. How have our levy rates changed? And also which years did we authorize the budget adjustment for 3% or less? And as I recall, over the last 10 years, I think there's only been a couple where we've had, we've authorized the 3%. I think most of those 10 years we have not. So that would be important to compare. The frustration, of course, with this government, as with others dependent on property taxes, is that the legislature has provided us with fewer tools, not more. And one of the most frustrating is to see that these increases in assessments are disproportionately falling on homeowners. The balance is shifted towards homeowners, and that's where the pinch is. That's where I think I agree with Commissioner Pickering that it's gotten to the point where, because the legislature just has a flat homeowners exemption, they got rid of the indexing of the homeowners exemption, which would have helped to keep it a little more balanced. It just keeps getting more and more out of balance. You know, when your property taxes, your assessed value goes up by another 100,000, and yet your homeowner's exemption stays at 125,000. So that's the frustration. And whether and I think we've done a good job in the past of just saying we are sensitive to that failure of the legislature provide really meaningful balancing with homeowners. And so we've held off on those increases. So what I'd like to do is see that data too.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson. So couple of follow-up questions. One, I can tell you that the levy rate is significantly decreased over the last 10 years. I remember when it was, and this is how I refer to it, 3 zeros and a 9 versus now 3 zeros and a 4, because then you get into the thousandths conversation.
So I'll just interrupt you there. I think that's important for the public to know. So they know in doing the analysis that we see over these last 10 years, you know, what has that number been? So that's why I think it's really important. And of course, we don't remember it. Maybe Commissioner Goldthorpe can remember all those details, but I can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to get that information, and you wanted it for the last 10 years to see what the levy rate was and then what the analysis was. Again, with decreased levy rates, obviously that has to do with the skyrocketing and the increasing in the total market value and the assessed value of homes, right? So it's quite the battle with having a low levy rate. Typically you have a higher home value with that. I think the home value, the total market value went from 90 billion to over 105 billion in 23 to 24. And of course, we saw some of those huge increases during the pandemic era when we had so many of those home values that had skyrocketed in that time period. And then you would ask something about budget adjustments for 3%.
Well, which years did we authorize taking 3%? Or I think I think we've always authorized the
new construction roll?
Yeah.
We have not taken it.
Okay, there's my memory's not.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, and then in the middle of that, House Bill 389 came out, and it went from automatically they would calculate whatever increase you didn't take,
Right.
that then you had to adopt a resolution for that. So that's been some
Preserve your
changes that have
foregone.
also happened in
Yeah.
there too, which again, whether or not you add it to your foregone. Last year during the FY24 budget adoption, the commission did elect and did adopt a resolution to put that 3% that was not taken last year into the foregone balance. Foregone balance is over $12 million at this time.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
So commissioners, just to put a point on where we are right now, and Christine's done a great job answering questions, and we're glad to bring back more data. Based on kind of the head nod we're getting, and this is what we're gauging, staff will go ahead and move forward with the increases that are shown on the screen as we build the budget. As you recall, even with those increases, we're about $6 million over. So we are going to be pulling some things out of the budget and working through that process. And that's the next phase of this conversation. But as we said, we wanted to pause and make sure that was okay. Because whatever the commission decides associated with the revenue is, we just balance to that number. One key point, and I know Christine will make this, is at the budget hearing, when the commission adopts the budget, you can always go down. You cannot go up at the budget hearing. So as we're building this budget, this would be our plan. And then during that continued process, there's going to be more work sessions. We can always, it's easier to kind of pull things out and pare things down than it is at the end to try and push things in, because it becomes challenging. So just we'll pause, and that's the way we're headed. If we get that head nod, we can move on with the presentation.
Thanks, Justin. Was that a head nod?
It was.
Okay. Thank you. I'll get this again. All right. So what is balancing and how do we do it? So again, we go through with the property tax certification, look at every revenue source that the district has. On average, we're looking at about a 3% increase in most revenue sources, major of those being highway distribution account, impact fees. Of course, we look at those as an increase, as well as what's going on in the building industry, registration fees and the like. And then of course, some of the project related revenues that come in are those for cost share and federal aid. We wouldn't have the cost share of the federal aid if we typically didn't have those expenses on that side. And then the reservation utilization. So I can tell you that in the calculations for the revenue, and then on the expenditure side also, we do have the strategic initiative funding for the Highway 16 projects. So essentially those are what I would call a net zero. And then the future facilities reservation, completing the traffic ops facility, which should be done in just shy of a year from now, beginning the Apple maintenance, and then the remodeling of the Meeker building. So all that goes into the revenue projections, in addition to rescheduled projects and some other items that again are kind of a net zero effect. We have to make sure they're sitting on both sides of the transaction. And then we look at operations and the expenditure side. So we look at the operational budget. We look at the capital project budget, and then we also look at the capital facilities budget. It was a few years ago when we really broke out the capital facilities budget out of the capital project budget. When we realized how big the capital facilities were going to get, we didn't want to bloat the capital project budget or skew the analysis from that from one year to the next. If we include $15 million for an Apple maintenance facility, it skews the percentages that we're spending on those roadways. And it was really important to us to be able to tell that story in a consistent manner. So that is kind of the first step in the submission of all of this. I can tell you just at a high level, the capital budget review, we did pull in all available projects ready for construction. I'll have a slide a little bit later to talk about what those projects are and some opportunities that we'll work through for balancing. On the capital facilities, their major costs are revenue neutral from cash reserves. Cash reserves being those things that the commission has saved from revenues received in previous years. If you'll recall at first adjustments, staff had recommended and the commission approved to put $14.4 million into the future facilities budget to be spending in FY25, and that's exactly what we've programmed that to do. And then on the operational budget review, we have actually an overall 0.5% decrease in operational requests. A lot of that has to do with some fleet vehicles that came in later and were encumbered and were pushed into the FY 24 budget from the FY 23 budget. All right, so budget is a balancing act, and what are the options? As I previously mentioned, the operational budget is relatively flat. It's relatively unchanged, and without the operational budget, we can't function or do the capital project budget. And the big dollars for balancing when we get to here are in the capital project budget. We have to look at different aspects of each of the projects that are available, depending on what their funding is, depending on operational or coordination corridors, parallel corridors, and the like, to ensure that if we remove a project that is fully covered by federal funding, that doesn't really save us or get us any closer to balancing. So those are all of the different nuances that the budget committee and myself take into consideration. So with that, these are the major capital construction projects that are in FY 25. I have Linder, Main to Deer Flat circled, and I can go through some of the reasonings for that. So a lot of these projects have additional funding available for them. Eagle Road and State, we got strategic initiative grant money for well over half of that project. Lake Hazel, Eagle Road, and the road segment, as well as the State and Pierce Park, was related or has high impact fee related projects or costs, excuse me. The Linder Road overpass of 4.3 million, City of Meridian. I think that agreement might have been on the agenda today. If not, it's coming soon. And then the Ustick corridor, Black Hat to 10 Mile portion is strategic initiative funding. So again, that would be a net zero adjustment. Aikens is along the lines of previous economic development category that we had. Horseshoe Bend, Hill to State is ready to go. And then the State Street and 21st Ped Crossing, doing that in conjunction with some additional projects that are going on in that area. Linder Road, Main to Deer Flat, excuse me, is one of the projects. It's pretty close to ready. We're not 100% on right of way. It seemed like a good one that we could kind of push out, put it back into 26, which is where it was originally sitting, and then kind of see where we got to in FY 25. Does the commission have any comments or questions about this?
Commissioner Hanson?
No, I just want to point out that, we didn't have the work session on Warm Springs, and that's a big ticket item. And so just remember the layout of these, which are all outside of the area of the old part of the district I represent, and know that big project of Warm Springs is really important and needs to be in there, but it won't be in this coming fiscal year nor the following one, other than the expenditures for the design concept. So I just know that it goes back and forth across the county, but we can pretty much see where the major capital expansion is in the county. I did have a question though, when we're talking about operational capital and capital budgets, is maintenance is sort of split between the two, because we have capital maintenance and we have operational maintenance. And so that's always confused me as to what maintenance to me is maintenance. We've got assets. They're the public assets. We have to maintain them. And every year we get more assets. So just to help me understand, maybe it's later in your program, of how and why we split maintenance between operational and capital maintenance.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson. So the easiest way that I can explain that, which maybe someone has a better way to do that than I, but operational maintenance are things that our crews do, the chip seal program, crack seal program, things that our staff does. On the maintenance, the capital maintenance are those that are then, excuse me, contracted out, our federal aid capital maintenance projects, arterials and collector capital projects. So those that are bid out, major geotech is done in the design process, a full design concept is done, And then we bid that out in our formal bid process in order for a contractor to do it. It's typically bigger projects. We don't have a paving machine. It's the mill and inlays of those types of projects. That's the easiest way I have to differentiate the two. I know that, you know, we use one word and we're like, we don't mean it there, but we mean it over here. I understand, but I can only define it in that way. If you need additional instruction or clarification, I'm happy to get that for you.
Commissioner
Madam
Goldthorpe.
President.
Yes. The Linder Main Street to Deer Flat that's circled is in our coming budget. Is that something that that you think we ought to consider removing from this year's budget and putting into the next, and hoping that we get low enough bids for the Lake Hazel, Eagle Road to Amity Road project? Because, you know, if we don't get reasonable bids on there, we're probably not going to do it anyway for a while. And so I'm thinking that rather than toss one project and hope for the next, that unless we can resurrect the Linder Road project, if we don't do the Eagle Road project, and we can resurrect that one very quickly. Is that a possibility, Justin?
Madam President, members of the commission. So yes, essentially the green circle there is a recommendation to not include in the adopted budget the funding for Linder Main to Deer Flat to help with that balancing. As we said, we're about $6 million off. We have a $5.2 million estimated project, and then we believe the other million will work through and we can balance that out. To your direct question, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yeah, we can be responsive. If something happens on one of these other projects and there is an opening to bring that project back, Linder Main to Deer Flat, we can absolutely do that. And our intent would be to move in that direction and get that project ready to go and have it essentially on the shelf, ready to go if funding becomes available. And as you know, in the bidding environment that we're in, everything you see there, and I love to remind people of this, is an estimate. All those bold numbers, 12 million, 9 million, 4.3 million, you're going to find out as a commission what it costs when we bring you back the bid, and then you'll make your final decision on how to move forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pickering.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm honestly just a little disappointed because none of these are in my district. And so just there's obviously a lot of important investments and all of these projects are obviously worthwhile. But just really disappointed about the fact that there isn't anything that is being constructed in my district for next year. So looking forward to chatting with you guys offline and figuring out a way that all districts are well represented and invested in this upcoming year. And yeah.
One last thing, and I would just remind us all that it is not the objective of the integrated 5-year work plan to represent every district the same. We have had a number of years over the years when one district or another hasn't had anything going on. We have had a number of years when, because of whether it's inflation or a recession or whatever, that projects have been moved around considerably. And I would tell you that the 10-mile road project, the Locust Grove Road project that are now completed were two of those that were done that way. And Justin will probably correct me if I'm wrong.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, no, I think it is true that we listed these as major capital construction. So you see the numbers are big. This in no way represents all construction efforts that are going across the district. There are many rapid implementation projects, smaller projects that are ongoing that are spread out across the agency. So our intent here this was more of a balancing discussion. This was not an attempt to try and show everything we're doing. It was just an attempt to show when we're doing balancing and you're looking at a number around 6 million, you kind of got to go after the big stuff to balance it out. So that was our intent. And I apologize if there's any confusion about what's happening by district. And in our integrated 5-year work plan, that's a much better representation of all the different things that are happening. When we adopt the budget and have our map, you'll be able to see things across the county. Thank you.
And I understand that, Justin, and thank you for sharing that. It's just I think we need to be really mindful of, obviously, like for sake of our budget, I think you're right. We need to be mindful of like what projects might need to be pushed out because of our budget constraints. But it's also, we need to also demonstrate how we're investing across our entire county with the mindset of course, Commissioner Goldthorpe's point that some things come and go depending on the frequency and sequencing of various projects and investments. So thank you.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Hanson.
and I'm just gonna raise this probably more with Justin and also with Christie. Um, the title community programs, those are really capital reinvestments. These are projects, these are infrastructure that already exists and we're reinvesting in it with some improvements that enhances safety and accessibility and mobility and all these reasons. And I just continue to have heartburn just categorizing them as somehow sort of like community projects, some sort of something that's not as important as an investment in the capital investment. So again, I would reiterate, we should clarify when we're building new, the capital investment program is really capital expansion, investment in expansion. And the other list is an investment or a reinvestment in what we already have. And so that I think the tendency to treat new stuff as an investment and repair and improvements, safety, mobility in existing infrastructure is somehow a community program. And those are investments as well. And I think when we invest there, the value of those areas return on that investment.
Thank you.
I have one more slide I'd really like to get to. There we go. Next step. So my goal right now is to have a balanced budget packet delivered on July 10th. That is also the same day that Christie will have the initial draft of the integrated 5-year work program. July 17th and the 24th, my plan is to be before the commission in work session format for the what is referred to historically as the line-by-line review. We do currently have a tentative plan for July 18th, the budget and integrated 5-year work plan open house. And then Justin alluded to this a little bit before. I kind of wanted to touch on it again. August 7th, I will bring before the commission the publication that I will be sending to the newspaper. This is a requirement in statute. In order for us to do that, it requires us to show our FY 25-26 budget, line out any significant changes in there, ensure that the date, time, and location of the public hearing is in there, publish it a specific amount of times. I'll publish it the Tuesday, Wednesday of the following weeks, in addition, or in anticipation of the public hearing on August 28th. Now, when we send that publication to the newspaper, the amount that is in the property tax certification, the amount that is stated in the newspaper publication, it cannot increase on the 28th. It can only decrease. Now, there can be other adjustments within the budget that can adjust if there's additional revenues or the like, but that's the one number that is specified that it cannot increase after you publish it to the public. And the August 28th date, it should is on everyone's assessment notice also, so it is notified there.
Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President, and this is actually for communications. The budget open house, budget and integrated 5-year work plan. I thought one of the most effective open houses we had was a special one that communications ran for neighborhood associations, homeowners associations. What are we doing? What are your concerns? And so, because in recent years, we've had such tiny turnout to the open house. And now that people are used to participating at earlier stages, this should be framed in the same sort of context. Let's follow up based upon what you've said to us through the 5-year work plan and through budget suggestions over the last year. And here's where we are. So Otherwise, I think we'll be disappointed. Sometimes we have like 3 times as many staff as we do public attending at the budget open house.
All right, thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we have today. That we're gonna go into executive session now. Thanks, everyone.